Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. That wasn't what I expected. That was not what I anticipated being at the end of a wet and long trip up to Manchester. I don't know why, because when you think about it, there's so many times that Spurs absolutely cause chaos for Man City. Certain players keep scoring against Man City. Yet I must admit, I doubted them. I doubted the fact that they had such a battered, makeshift patchwork team. How in the world would they possibly come away with anything from the Etihad Stadium with a team that had four fullbacks, four wingers, and surely no chance of keeping out the might of Manchester and all of their goals and billions spent on quality? How would that even be possible? Somehow, Tottenham Hotspur returned home with a point from Manchester. It was a tale of two halves, as the old cliche would go. And at times it was like Spurs were kind of riding a bucking bronco, just clinging on for dear life, especially in that first half. But they made it. They made it to the end of the time, and the bronco did not buck them off. That sounds weird. Incredible, really. Some of the stuff that happened. Look, they rode their luck. They rode the bronco. They rode their luck. City hit the woodwork 3 times. One Doku chance hit the crossbar and post in one go. Erling Haaland was, unusually for him, pretty horrendous in front of goal. And I think a lot of frustration at the end was born of that as well. There was a couple of chances. He was right in front of goal and just had to tap it home almost. Whereas Spurs, real quality. All 3 goals were real quality and clinical. And it kind of makes you think, why did you do that against Villa? You created 18 chances against Villa. Couldn't you just put 1 or 2 more of them away? But I guess we can't be fussy. Look, there's 2 ways to look at the match. First one is all of the pre-match talk about, Postecoglou's stubborn, naive, gung-ho. His tactics are crazy. Why would you go to the Etihad Stadium and play like that? They're going to get hammered. They're going to get destroyed. Yeah, maybe they could have done, had that first half gone a little bit kind of more in City's favour. I say more in City's favour. Had City been better in front of goal, really? Let's be honest. Even if you're hitting the woodwork, that's an off-target shot. How could they possibly go there with those kind of tactics, with such a kind of messed up team in terms of personnel available? How could you possibly go there? It's ridiculous. Yet they go into the Lions' Den and they come away with an unlikely point. And I think the fact that first half was so bad in certain degrees was because they weren't playing in the Postecoglou way. It was a massive kind of pointer towards the Australians' process, I think. And we'll talk about that in a bit. I guess the other way to look at it is, like I say, they were utterly wasteful, City, and Spurs got away with it. Do you know what? I had a little stat here. Erling Haaland missing some sitters. That's the first time in the Bundesliga or Premier League that he's had 5 shots in a game without sending a single one on target. And then, of course, those who like a bit of controversy will say at the end with the moment with the referee. And I think in the cold light of day, Pep Guardiola, who actually was quite measured in his press conference afterwards, I think he looks at that and thinks, you know what? That was not the defining point of this match. Not by a long shot. If you've missed what happened, essentially Emerson Royale slid into a challenge on Erling Haaland, late, missed the ball, took Haaland, but the ball was then knocked over the top to Grealish, who was running on. City went absolutely mad because the referee, having said play on, quite clearly with his arm saying played on, decided to pull it back. They went absolutely mad, and it was a thing after the game. What I would say, and this was my big issue with it in the moment of, look, let's not get away from the fact, refereeing, it was weird. The officiating in that moment was strange. I didn't understand the justification of suddenly stopping it. Whether he felt that there was an advantage, I don't know. And the only reason I say that is because what leads me on to my view on it is that Jack Grealish was not running clear. Jack Grealish is not a super pacey player. Ben Davies had caught him up in that point as the ball was played back. I don't think... Look, it's still denying a potential opportunity. He could have shrugged off Davies and ran through. Who knows? Or someone else could have joined him. But in that moment, for me, Ben Davies was coming back to cover him. Maybe that's what the referee saw. Maybe that was why he decided there wasn't an advantage. I don't know. But as I said, that wasn't the killer moment in the game. City at home should not be relying on a late free kick being played advantage for them. They know that as well. And I think Haaland's anger came from a performance that just wasn't very good from an absolutely brilliant striker. He just wasn't on the ball, on the boil. Any of the above. It was a weird one. I mean, ultimately, those two different ways of looking at the game, I think it's probably lies somewhere in between. Spurs ultimately I think they just about deserved their point, really, for their performance in the second half was so much better. I wouldn't say they were dominant in the second half, but they certainly disrupted City's flow and pushed them back for quite long little spells as well. And like I say, every goal, a really good goal. Because that first half was weird. I mean, obviously they got the early goal through Sonny, which was a terrific goal. We'll talk about that in a mo. But they looked nervy, Spurs. They looked like they were affected by the atmosphere and the noise, the fact that we were playing at the Champions as well. They were ponderous in a possession. They were really hesitant with their passing at times. City were able to press them and actually just worry them and make them make mistakes that weren't really necessary. I wouldn't say, it was ferocious pressure, but it was just pressure enough to worry them about the presence of someone, and that really goes against the Postecoglou way. The Postecoglou way is they are trained relentlessly, day in, day out, to have opponents flying at them and knowing exactly what to do, where to position themselves, what the movements are. And actually, one that I've really started to notice, which is it looks lovely when it happens as well, is that one of the centre-backs brings the ball forward, or the full-backs, and the centre midfielder will rush back. It's often the number 6, will rush back towards midway in his own half. The ball will be played to him, and first time he will sweep it out to the wing and then turn and get up the pitch, knowing that one of the full-backs is racing up there ready to do it. And it pretty much always plays around the press and allows a real space in behind the opposition as well. It's a really good one. And it's just one of many. There's so many little triangles that they use to get out of it. And when they do it properly, like they did in a lot of the second half, it's lovely. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Man City at the Etihad or it was Arsenal at the Emirates, it's lovely. And Guglielmo Vicario, other than one moment which he made a great save from Silva, mostly his use of the ball was phenomenal, I'd go as far to say. His under pressure and knowing what to do in tight situations is superb for a player that didn't really have to do that at Empoli. It's very, very impressive. Might be something that I ask Ange about this week, because it was something I really, really noticed yesterday, that he's so calm. Like I say, one mistake, but he made up for it. So that first half, not great. I think the second half, two things happened. First off, really important, quite angry team talk from Ange. And secondly, the introduction of Pierre-Emile who is swiftly, for me, becoming one of Tottenham's super sub. He really is. I don't think when he starts the games he's as good for some reason. He still has had some decent performances when starting, but on the whole, I think a lot of his best performances come on from the bench, changing a game, bringing something that the game didn't have, and I felt he did that again yesterday. I've got the stats for you as well. Because of that second half, it wasn't what you would expect to have at the Etihad. Normally, City would boss loads of possession, but they didn't. It was 55% possession to City, 45 to Spurs. They only had 99 more passes than Spurs. They had 501. Spurs had 402. Both shots only had 4 shots on target each. Obviously, Spurs scored from their... Actually, both sides scored from their 3. No, technically, no. City didn't score from 3, did they? Because Son's was an own goal. Of course, 4 shots on target each. City had 17 efforts at goal. Spurs had 8. You can kind of tell in these stats where the more defensive work was done. Spurs' makeshift defence had 34 clearances to City's 10. And Vicario only had to make 2 saves, though. Say only. There were 3 goals went past him, so it's a bit of a kind of a misnomer, that one. But only one kind of real big save that he made, which was that one from Silva after his own loose pass. Vicario couldn't really, for me, do much about the 3 goals. I'm trying to think. They were all kind of pretty much close range. Just trying to get a little bit on the wall. That for some reason my camera is slowly determined to turn itself so that you can see it. It's like a little chip on the wall that once in a while you watch, the camera will slowly pan across. There you go. Look. It is slowly moving. I don't know what that is about. It's determined that it's going to show you that constantly. The strange moment in this video. I don't know why it's doing that, but hey, it's going to. You watch. In the next couple of minutes, it will work its way back across. There's a ghost. There's a ghost in the machine. Yeah, I don't think Vicario could do much about those 3. Sorry, that's cracked me up. I don't know why. That's absolutely put me off my flow. I was trying to think of all 3 goals. All close range. Obviously, Sonny's one. Nothing really Sonny could do about that either. Or Vicario. Do you know what? There's a little stat with Sonny. He becomes only the 5th player in Premier League history to record a goal, an assist, and an own goal in the same match. Bale did it. He was one of the other 4 that did it. Did it in November 2012 against Liverpool. And actually, I didn't realise how close it was between Sonny's scoring and Sonny's own goal. 137 seconds. And that made him only the 2nd player in Premier League history to score a goal and an own goal in the opening 10 minutes of a game. For those really interested, Gareth Barry was the other player who did it 24 years ago for Aston Villa against Charlton. Yeah, like I say, at the other end of the pitch, Spurs, all 3 goals lovely, all real works of kind of Postecoglou, right out of his playbook. Really nice finishes. First one actually was probably the best thing Brian Hill did all day. He did a really nice kind of turn, used a bit of strength on the edge of the Spurs box, twisted, got it to Kulusevski. Kulusevski hits a first-time ball into the path of Sonny, who used real strength and determination, headed it on, drove to the City box. Brennan Johnson did a nice kind of drawing run to take players across. And obviously he probably would have been there had Sonny needed to put the ball across, but he didn't because he hit a powerful shot, which maybe Ederson could have done better, but ultimately it is. Look, it's coming into the corner there, that little bit of white paint. That is so weird. Oh, then it's moved out again. It's not even white paint, it's whatever would be underneath it. Yeah, so lovely first goal. Second goal, really good work from Ben Davies. Ben Davies does a diving, intercepting header ahead of Haaland. Ball goes to Sonny. Sonny plays it into Lo Celso's path, and then Son embarks on a similar, like a dummy run, takes the defence away with him, and Lo Celso just curls a beauty into the corner. I think Ederson got like fingertips to it. And then obviously Jack Grealish hit back quite quickly with a goal that was a bit of a mess at the other end for Spurs. And then came that beautiful 3rd goal. Oliver Skipp, nice little cameo, did a little twist and turn, worked the ball to Sonny again. Sonny plays it into a lovely outside of the foot pass, a bit like Maddison would do, into the path of Brennan Johnson, beats Walker down the flank and whips the ball across with his left foot for Dejan Kulusevski to head in. A little bit of shoulder and head, but we're not complaining because that is the exact contact it needed to send the ball off of the crossbar and into the goal. But yeah, it's I think a lot of the credit has to go to not only the players, but also that half-time team talk by Ange. A few of the players really spoke about it as well and what it meant afterwards and what it did. But that's just an important point, really. It really is. I mean, if you can go to the reigning champions, despite being really lacking in personnel, yet come away with a point. What does it say about what you're going to be like when you're full strength? I mean, that's a massive thing. That's it will. The confidence will flow through a lot of those, I'd say fringe players, but those players who weren't getting a lot of minutes, who've now shown what they can do in the biggest of occasions. And some of the newer players like Brennan Johnson as well. We'll talk about him a little bit in and out of the game, but still another big moment for him against big opponents. But like I say, came down to, I think, Postecoglou's way of words as well. And I got quotes from Kulusevski afterwards in his Spurs interview. He said, "Unbelievable second half. The coach was very angry at half time and we came out like a new team. Vic and the guys at the back never lost the ball, kept playing, believed in themselves, no pressure. I was very impressed with them." And he was asked, what did the gaffer say? He said, "Can you just start playing? Stop making simple mistakes, just play. You are good enough and you're as good as these guys, so just please play and don't be afraid." He was very angry, and it was the first time I've seen him like that, but he did the right thing, and he's right, because the only thing we had to do was just grow a little bit more. We needed to be stronger. We're here. We can play against the best, and if we can do that, we'll be up the top at the end of the season, I'm sure. So I'm sure that's not exactly what Postecoglou said, more like the Swedish paraphrasing of it. But yeah, Vicario also said about it, he said, "We must take some risks on the back because this is our style of football. We want to play in that way. We have to try to find a third man and then break the lines and try to give us the best opportunity to score. It's all about mentality. We just had to change a bit what we hadn't done in the first half and then be braver, show more courage with more intention to take some risks and to go through, because if we don't accept the challenge, you cannot play here because it's a tough stadium with a big team. So we have to try to manage the level with them and then we try to do our best. But I'm still buzzing for this moment," as in the late goal. "The fans were unbelievable today. Big thanks to them, and we're waiting for that again on Thursday." Yeah, the fans were great. You could hear the fans from the press area. They were noisy throughout. City fans were stunned for quite a few little moments in that second half and getting frustrated. You could just hear the Spurs fans kind of coming through. What else did he ask? I asked Postecoglou essentially about kind of whether he was he pleased with the spirit and the result, if not the football. And he said, "I'm pleased for the players that the effort they put in got a reward for it, because sometimes you don't. First half, we were lucky to still be in it, to be honest. City could have blown us away in that period. They certainly had enough chances to do so. We had no real conviction or belief in what we were doing. We were giving the ball away a lot. We hung in there, I guess. It was similar to us last week, that we missed a lot of chances, but sometimes in football, you give the opposition a chance. We had to just calm down at half-time, and the effort the boys put in during the second half was outstanding. Again, it's very easy to get blown away at this arena against such a great team, but we hung in there and we made it uncomfortable for City, I thought, in the whole second half. They never really got total control of the game, and that's the key to getting something out of it. We scored 3 quality goals, which you have to against a team like that. So pleased for the players that the effort they put in the second half, they got a reward for it." So yeah, he really wasn't happy with that first half. That came through in not only his answer to me there, but also I saw some of the interviews he did with the club and BBC and Sky as well, and you could see that first half irked him. And he always plays it down if you kind of tell him he looked angry or he did something. So he didn't kind of say that he was angry at half time when he was asked that kind of what was said, but he's like that. I remember when Charlie Eccleshare from the Athletic asked him if he looked angry. It's quite a few times we'll see him look really angry on the sideline. If you ask him, he'll say, "No, I wasn't." He doesn't like people, I think, kind of knowing something about him. I think that's what it is. It's a little bit similar to like the pecking order thing. Do you remember when he told me, "There's no pecking order, mate," and then a couple of weeks later spoke about the pecking order in his squad. And there was another one the other day. What was it? It was. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but it was George Sessions from PA Sport asked him about Yves Bissouma and his discipline and stuff like that, and he was like, "Oh yeah, he's got to learn from that. It's not good. You can't do that essentially, and everyone in the squad needs to learn the lesson from it." And I remember asking way back when Bissouma had 3 or 4 yellow cards and saying like, "Oh, does he have to really kind of be careful here, because this is an area of his game that he's racking up these yellow cards quite quickly, and it could be something that really kind of impacts him." And he was like, no. That's just how he plays. That's where he plays in the pitch. That's going to happen. It's nothing to be worried about. No, I'm not going to have to speak to him about it. And here we are, weeks later. People have got to learn from it. He's got to learn from it. And this is not to have a pop at Postecoglou, who's been brilliant. And he's been brilliant to me as well. In press conferences, I get great answers. It's just to show that I think managers have all these little quirks. And they don't like you, like I say, having figured out something about them. They don't like that. They like to be unpredictable and unknown and mysterious. And we found that about Postecoglou. That's one of the early things. A few journalists have been speaking about it, how you can essentially at times maybe tell him something is black and he'll tell you it's white. And then later he'll tell you it's black. It's quite funny. That's not to say he doesn't agree with you quite a lot of the time, but there are just certain moments when he'll do that. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. It's a little thing we've noticed. He did feel that Højbjerg made the difference when he came on. He said, I think the change helped. I thought Pierre was excellent in the second half. His experience out there, I thought we just as a group had a lot more conviction about our football, just passing it and not second-guessing ourselves and being hesitant with our passes like we did in the first half. Look, I'm on the touchline and everything outside looks easy, but when you're out there, you're facing a world-class team in a venue where they don't give up too many things. It's understandable in many respects, but at the same time, as I said to them at half-time, whatever fallout or bad outcome there is, I'll take the responsibility. I'm the one that's putting them out there. Let's at least show a little bit more conviction about the kind of football team we want to be, and I thought they did that in the second half. You're never going to totally dominate a game of football here, but in the second half I thought we were very much in the game against a very good football side. And I think that's always been his mantra, Postecoglou. It is to take the responsibility off the players and say, look, if you make a mess, they're not going to come for you because I'm going to come out post-match and say, no, got no issues with that. I told them to do that. That's my fault. And he's always done that throughout his career. And I think sometimes he just has to remind them of that. See that little white dot in the wall in the corner. For those watching this on their TVs, that's going to be really big in the corner. Let's see if I can slightly move it again, because no, I can't, because I'm not actually touching the right part of the thing. There you go. It's going to work its way back there. I know it is. I think it's probably time for a new stand to stick my phone on, to be honest. The stand's going to hear that and now collapse in a fit of rage. After the game, we had that strange moment where all the City players were incensed at the referee. Guardiola was as well. Haaland swept his long locks out of there, whatever he ties it up with, and he was angrily shaking his hair at everyone. And then there was this weird little bit where Lo Celso, I still can't work out exactly how it played out and who was at fault. I think I have my instinct of what happened. So if you haven't seen it, as Haaland's walking off, he kind of half shakes hands with a couple of players. I think they were City players. And then Lo Celso kind of edges towards him. Lo Celso's got his kind of puffer jacket on. He'd come off after about 15 minutes to go. He's got his hands in his pockets. And I don't know whether he felt like Haaland was going to snub him and wasn't going to take his hand and put it towards him. But it also looks like Lo Celso's still got his hands in his pockets. So what ends up happening is Lo Celso kind of ends up like doing that, like almost a shoulder barge into Haaland, but not really. And the two of them, and you can kind of see Haaland's hand goes out as if he was half attempting to do a handshake, but couldn't really be bothered. Whatever happened, Lo Celso then decided, I'm going to turn around and have a bit of a whinge at Erling Haaland. Haaland hears that, whips his head round, starts shouting back at Lo Celso, and then out of nowhere, using his pace, Brennan Johnson cuts off Lo Celso, stops him going any further, and then Ange Postecoglou suddenly arrived in front of Erling Haaland and stands in front of him and essentially is telling him to go back down the tunnel. I don't know whether Haaland really processed that it was Postecoglou in front of him. And what I did notice is Haaland's so big that he even made Postecoglou look quite short. He is a huge unit of a player, Erling Haaland. He really is. But I just thought it was really weird. This sight of Postecoglou telling him, no, it's not worth it, mate, and just like telling him to go back into the tunnel, and Lo Celso being ushered away as well. It's one of those we'll probably never truly know exactly what happened. My instinct tells me there was a little bit of Lo Celso kind of using the Lamella-esque I'm going to wind him up even more because he's already annoyed kind of way that Lamella could be. But I don't know. Lo Celso played well, so I've got no qualms with Lo Celso yesterday. He had another really good game. But yeah, just quite a funny one. And Postecoglou was asked about the that moment with the ball being pulled back when Grealish had it and he was running on. In the press conference, he was asked did he have any thoughts, and he was like, not really, mate, and just kind of laughed, and the press conference ended. And he was asked afterwards, I think it was Sky maybe, he said, it doesn't affect me at all. I don't think that is the story of the game today. There are better storylines from that fantastic game of football than one refereeing decision. And I agree. That's kind of what I said earlier. I don't think City can groan and grumble and complain. And I think, didn't Guardiola say something about, I'm not going to give a Mikel Arteta answer? Something like that. I can't remember what he said. Because ultimately it was not that decided the game. It didn't define the game. City just needed to be better in front of goal, really, and that was it. And make Vicario make more than the one save he made from his own mistake. Look, they scored 3 goals. Ultimately, normally that would be enough to win you a game at home, but Tottenham Hotspur had other ideas because they're that kind of crazy club. So yeah, I mean, Postecoglou words are important, definitely. I think he released the fear in the players for the second half. You could tell not long, although I think that Vicario, if I remember, that Vicario mistake actually came quite soon after the halftime talk. But essentially he was trying to make them take risks, and I guess that was part of it. And like I say, all I came away thinking was, what is Spurs team under Postecoglou with a full strength look to it, with actual central defenders, going to be like playing at the Etihad? It's quite exciting. It really was. It could be. So looking forward to the attacking players. Going to give you some positives in my mind. I kind of just mentioned him. Lo Celso is definitely one. Starting to show real glimpses of kind of what we all hoped would be there. And he's got a massive opportunity right now. Maddison's, I don't think, unless he has a real push forward in his progress, I'd imagine in terms of being back in match action, you're maybe looking further into January. It's quite funny when you say Postecoglou said he's going to be back in the new year. I think people get it into their brains, January the 1st. It's like, it's not like that. I think it will be as January goes on, to maybe even mid towards the end of January. He'll be, because obviously he's got to come back first. He's got to be in training, and he's got to get involved, and he's got to build up his fitness after so long out. There's so many elements to it. It's not like literally like you click your fingers and they're back in the starting 11. It may be that over the course of December he has some good progress with the injury and maybe comes back a little bit early in January, but certainly the feeling is with him and Van de Ven that it's going to be as we get into January, not at the start of January, or less likely to be at the start of January. But, it's one of those, you can't say it's going to be this date, it's going to be that exact date. You have to kind of give a slightly rough time frame because everyone's body heals at different rates. It's quite as simple as that. But Lo Celso, we know now, has at least another month, if not month and a half. Who knows, maybe even 2 months if Maddison's not ready by the end of January. He's got a lot of time to kind of push his claims. And as I said before, it's important that he not only shows consistency, but keeps himself fit, away from injury. That's been a big killer for him in his Spurs career, I think. But he just brings something that little bit different on the left of the midfield three. He brings the aggression that they need and desire to play forward passes, but also a little bit of creativity and showing that goal-scoring touch. That's 2 goals in 2 games now. Both lovely finishes. Could have had another one as well. He had a cracking half volley, which was a little bit similar-ish to the one against Villa. But this time it clipped the heel of Grealish and went wide. It was screaming towards goal. I think just the big problem with Lo Celso is he's only made 89 appearances in 4.5 years at Spurs. Partly that's, of course, due to the fact he was away on loan for 18 months of that, but also injuries. A few picked up on international duty that have kept him out of action for a while. And the annoying thing is when he is trusted and he feels the belief going through him, he's quite an impactful player in the final third. You know, he's got 9 goals now, 6 assists as well. He can do it. And obviously, like I said, he's near club record figure in total if you take his loan fee and the fee they paid for him in that 1920 season. Not 1920, 19/20. He wasn't around in 1920. Postecoglou praised him afterwards. He said, Gio is one of the ones that I felt in the second half really stood up. Pierre coming on helped us, but all 3 goals were quality. Sonny's finish was exceptional and Decky's header was brilliant. Against City, particularly here, you're not going to create a lot of chances, so when they come along, you've got to show the quality to take them, and we did. I'm sure because they got their rewards, it'll help the players in their process of continuing to be the team that we want to be. And that was another thing as well, is that I think people maybe mistook the fact that I think people really saw that high line with 9 men against Chelsea playing on the halfway line, in which they were just trying a way of at least getting the Spurs players near the goal to score while trying to catch Chelsea offside. And I think that's kind of got associated as the Postecoglou way, as if to say, oh, the Postecoglou way is 100% taking risks. There's no security, there's no safety to it, there's no defensive structure to it. And that's just rubbish. That's not how it is. We saw that with Romero and Van de Ven in that back line. They were conceding so few goals, really. And some of the goals they were conceding were really unfortunate. His system isn't like that. It's more about the principles than the way they kind of set up. So, like, Postecoglou's not daft. He knows that at the Etihad Stadium, you're not going to get as much of the ball as you expect. And you're going to have to weather the storm at times, purely because of the quality that City possess. But it's about what you do with the ball when you've got it. And so there were moments when Spurs were almost a little bit counter-attacking, especially first half. Obviously, he wasn't as happy with that. But that's all part of his process. If there are moments when you have to attack at pace, that's going to happen as part of the system. It's like, I think there's a kind of this misconception that Spurs are going to look to dominate every single match they play in. That's not really the way it works. It's about having the intention to take risks and the ability to not worry or fear what's going to happen if you do this, if you take option A and try to pass around the team. So, I think too much was made beforehand about it. Don't get me wrong, I was among those who was a little bit fearful about it. Was mainly to do with the personnel, about what would happen at City, and I was very pleasantly surprised at the end result. But I think people have got this thing about him as if he's like this guy that's rocked up with crazy tactics. And it's not like that. This guy's been managing for 28 years. He's managed at World Cups against, big teams. Managed at a World Cup with, a lesser strength kind of Argentinian, Australian side playing against big teams. And he hasn't gone kamikaze. That's not the way his football is. And he's gone to all these different countries and he's won league titles. You don't do that and have that much experience in the game by just going la 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 attack 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 attack. That's just not how it works. It's about, there is a structure in there and it's quite a solid structure as well. And that's what brings him success, and that's why he's got so much confidence in what he's doing, because he knows it's not just this all or nothing crazy style of football. It's just a very clever attack-based game, but with a very solid foundation to it. And then you've got Dejan Kulusevski. I just find him a joy to watch. He just never stops running. He's so strong on the ball. I love him in that deeper role, although I'm not sure whether we'll see him in that in the next match. Because I wonder whether Højbjerg's earned the chance to come back in and whether that naturally pushes Kulusevski further and Brian Hill comes out. But he's loving life at the moment. The ball for Sonny was a lovely first time, or very early ball to Sonny for the first goal. That was terrific as well. And then, of course, weighs in with that header/shoulder late in the game. And he knows how to score against City at the Etihad. I think that's 3 in a row now at the Etihad. All 3 times he's visited there, he's scored. And also, I remember he put in that lovely cross for Kane, didn't he? Late on for that one, the 3-2. Postecoglou said about him, Decky was excellent the whole game, and we can count on him attacking the box from that side. Him and Brennan Johnson have goals in them. We haven't had enough out of them yet, but they are there. It's great that those two combined for a great goal at the end. And interesting, there was a little clip, like a Spurs video clip of Kulusevski watching his, I was about to say winning goal, his equaliser. Sorry if I've said winning goal at any point. I often do that when it's a late equaliser. There's a little clip of him watching his goal. And in doing so, Spurs ask him to describe it, and he says, he actually kind of, to paraphrase massively, I thought I'm going to attack the box. It's something that not only the managers had a go at me about, but my teammates kill me about the fact of not getting into the box enough at the other end. I think it is because he doesn't really head the ball much, and maybe that's why we ended up with this weird head-shoulder hybrid of a finish, but hey, worked perfectly. And I thought that was quite interesting. That is something really that they want him to improve on. And he's had a little kind of uptick, hasn't he, in goals and assists as well. And the thing that I always think people forget is that he's 23 years old. I will say this every time I talk about Kulusevski until it sinks in with people. People that moan about him, I think they think that he's this end product, this 27-year-old, 28-year-old attacker who, he doesn't do this, he's not direct enough in that. But he's 23 years old. It's just crazy. I mean, yeah, of course he's got little things that can be improved. Like I said, the heading, also the fact, using his left foot too much, that's another thing. Not as bad as the Celso. The Celso, you could just watch him kind of constantly prodding that ball with his left foot, and the right goes, as Guesty said yesterday, his right foot is there for standing on. It's his balance. And Kulusevski, yeah, he needs to be a little bit more unpredictable. We've said it before. When he's on the right, sometimes he's going to cut in 99% of the time. And I think that's why playing in a deeper role, sometimes more centrally, benefits him, because he can go either way, and it gives him a little bit more of an option. But you've got to look at that. 62 Premier League appearances. He's had 11 goals and 16 assists. And that means he's had a goal involvement almost every other game in the Premier League. And as I always say, the biggest indicator of whether a player is good or not is if you take him out of the team, are the team poorer for that? And when you take Decky out of the Spurs team, I don't think Spurs ever look as good. He's, honestly, 23 years old. He's going to be, I still feel, a superstar. He adds more and more to his game. Gets more goals to his name as well. He's going to be some player. He spoke afterwards, told the BBC, I have to see my header again. I have to see it. He hasn't seen it at that point. I have no idea how I scored it. I didn't see the ball go in because I was on the floor, so I'd love to see it. First half, they were better than us and they deserved to be ahead, but second half, we were unbelievable. We played so good. We controlled the game. I'm so proud of the guys, and I think we deserved the point in the end. I think the team itself has a strong belief, but first half was not good enough. The coach was very angry at half time. He said, guys, stop thinking, just play, and we came out better, so I think we have to grow mentally. That's the only problem. The football is there, the coach is there, and we can be at the top in the future. He kept saying that, Kulusevski. He is certain that Spurs are going to finish the season right up there at the table. It was also quite interesting that he almost seemed to say that I think he actually said that he hasn't seen Postecoglou that angry before. But as a few players have said, in that Shakhtar friendly in pre-season, Postecoglou went mad at them at half-time because he was really trying to lay the groundwork of how he didn't want them to play going into the season. So whether either he's just forgotten that or he was busy, maybe he popped to the toilet, I don't know, in that half-time break against Shakhtar. But I think we have seen that before. I think he kind of uses his anger in specific moments, Postecoglou, who really wants to drill something into them that he doesn't want to see again, and they don't like to let him down. On his late goal, he said, Kulusevski, it's life. He says that quite a lot. It reminds me of the player from Ted Lasso. It's a great feeling. I'm just trying to breathe and be happy because what we did was special in the second half. These moments in life are small and you have to enjoy them. Just be thankful and proud of the team. So yeah, another very good Decky performance. I thought Son was excellent. As I always say to you, once in a while I'll look back at a player's performance, having seen more than just what we saw at the game and see little moments that they were involved in and be even more impressed with them. And Sonny is definitely one of those players for me after that performance. Like I say, terrific goal. He just gets in City's head. City are so scared of him. You can see the players backing off him as soon as he gets the ball. He scored a boatload of goals against City, home and away. What I really like about him as well is that he's really taking on another one of the Kane mantles, and that's to come deep to the centre circle, and he'll just hit the ball, hit the ball first time to the sideline, whether it be to a winger or a fullback, and then he spins and races up the pitch himself. It's really a shame. He made quite a few good runs yesterday that no one picked him out on the return from. But like I say, just so much involvement as well. Obviously scored the first goal, then got the assist for Lo Celso, then played a big part in the third goal, and even the little run away from Lo Celso to be able to give him the space to move into. I still think he's underrated, Son. I really do. I don't think people realise, even when he's not touching the ball, how much he does during a game. And he gets back and tracks back a lot as well, even though he's up top now centrally. And also, a little interesting stat, that goal was Sonny's 50th Premier League away goal, which makes him just the 7th player in the competition to score 50 home goals, 50 away goals, and provide 50 assists for a team in the Premier League. And actually, he's the first player to ever do that for Tottenham. I presume that must mean that Harry Kane never got to 50 assists in the Premier League, which would maybe make sense because he had one decent season, didn't he, of assists when he got the Playmaker Award, but actually he didn't rack up the assists, whereas Sonny often does. So, I mean, that's an incredible achievement. 50, 50, 50. Home goals, away goals and assists. That's brilliant. Yeah, he said after the game, told Sky Sports, that's why we love football, that late equaliser. That's what I told the lads. Obviously, Man City are a huge, huge team and one of the best teams in the world, but that's why we love football. It happens sometimes. We kept believing until 90 minutes, so I'm very, very proud of the team. And on that own goal he scored, he said, that's football. Sometimes it happens. I tried to do the best thing for the team and I couldn't react, but still a good experience to score against Man City. And he said about hopefully that late goal bringing more confidence into the team. He said the lads haven't given up until the last whistle, and brilliant work from Brennan. Unbelievable cross inside the box, and obviously Dejan doesn't score headers usually, but I'm very proud of him and he's massive. I think this point will bring us so much for the season. I think it's a huge point for the team and the players' confidence. I agree, absolutely. And one of those players he's mentioned there, Brennan Johnson, I think this was a moment for him when, again, I think he played pretty well against Arsenal as well, and I think this was another moment where he showed that he's going to be a player that steps up to the occasion. He steps up to be able to play against the big sides as well. That cross with his left foot was absolutely pinpoint, and I think the key for him, he drifted in and out of the game a little bit, but I think for him, his pace is going to be such a weapon for Spurs. It really is. And he's going to cause so many problems, especially when you get people like Porro and Maddison playing balls over the top. He's going to run onto those. Just needs to up his output. And I also think when he gets fitter, I'd like to see him getting back down the flank a little bit more and helping out the fullback even more. Although his stats were pretty decent. I noticed Spurs tweeted this out just before I started recording this. He made 5 ball recoveries and won 4 duels. So yeah, I just think the fitter he gets, the more he's going to be able to get up and down that pitch and really contribute. But yeah, important for him to get nearly 90 minutes, not quite 90 minutes. I think actually it was over 90 minutes because it was added time. I think Jamie Donnelly, who we'll speak about later, came on for Brennan Johnson, if I'm not mistaken. And actually thinking about that, talking about big opposition, That's another thing about the whole, Spurs are going to get, shown to be naive against the big teams. They're going to embarrass them. When you look at it, they've come away from the Etihad with a point. They've come away from the Emirates with a point. They've beaten Man U. They've beaten Liverpool, albeit obviously some little things went their way in that game. And even Chelsea, had they not pressed the, Romero hadn't pressed the self-destruct button and Udogie to a degree, Spurs were looking like they were going to win that match as well. So all of the traditional Big Six teams types that they've played against, they've looked really good against. They've won 2, drawn 2, lost one of the games because of the circumstances. Really? Does the Postecoglou system, the tactics, not really work against the big sides that can punish them? Doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it. And that shows you, if you can play that way against those big sides and come away with the points, then you should be doing that week in, week out against the other sides as well. So yeah, I thought that was quite a big thing as well, to just quieten down some of the noise around that. It was such a over-the-top kind of load of nonsense, a load of it. The other Johnson things he did as well, I noticed for that first goal, he really matched Sonny to get into that space as well. I felt in the second goal, he maybe could have gone in a little bit stronger on Gvardiol, went in on the edge of the box. Johnson kind of just hung a leg in rather than going in. I mean, maybe he was worried about committing a foul on the edge of the box, but he probably could have been a little bit stronger in that moment. But yeah, he can. His decision making, I feel, is getting better and better with each game, and that allied with his pace, he's going to be something special. And again, only 22 years old. Ridiculous, really. Oh, another little stat there. I didn't notice that one. Son becomes the first ever player in Premier League history to score away from home against 4 different reigning champions. Oof! What a player for the big occasion he really is. A little thing before I forget it later. Jamie Donny is the 880th player in the Spurs history to play a game for them. He gets one of those legacy numbers, doesn't he now? Sorry, I've suddenly got a little bit snotty. I was amazed I got through the last video. My throat was hoarse after that one. I've had a little bit of a iffy throat in the last week or so. There were some of the positives. I felt that there were a few negatives in terms of a couple of the performances, 2 or 3, that they can be better. Especially, that first half mainly, it was so sloppy, a lot of the play as well. Postecoglou said afterwards, we did give the ball away a lot and far too easily, but it wasn't due to pressure. It all looks easy from the sideline, but in this arena against that team, it is easy to make mistakes. But I thought a lot of it was down to us second-guessing ourselves. Second half, they played with clearer heads and left that to one side. We rode our luck a little bit, but the players did what they needed to do. That's part of football. We had a chance at half-time, showed resilience to come back, and right up until the end, we were still trying to score. And for me, one of those players that kind of epitomised Spurs not being in the way they needed to be is Yves Bissouma. And it's such a shame that he's probably the one that's disappointed me the most, and also in maybe recent games, obviously when he hasn't been suspended, because of the high standards he's set himself early in the season. He's been so good. He's lost a little bit of his sparkle since that red card at Kenilworth Road. We've spoken about it before, so I don't want to go into it too much. But definitely, it's just been this dip in his form. And actually, George... that was what I was talking about earlier. George from PA asked Ange about it ahead of the game, about this little dip in form he's had since that red card. And he said, I think it was just... This is Postecoglou. I think it was just more the disruption. He got the red card and then got suspended. So he hasn't had a good run at it since then, but I'm really pleased to get him back. He's such an important part of our setup with the way he plays in that role. And I would have loved to have seen him and Rodrigo in there. I had all these plans and they've just gone out the window. That's me speaking out loud, sorry. And this little moment where he started to kind of look up and dream about these plans that he'd had. It was very funny. He said, it's good to get Biss back, and if you look at the first third of the season from a results perspective, I reckon we're still on the positive side of the ledger from the first 13 performance-wise. I still think we're on the positive side, even though we've had some disappointments, but an area we need to improve is discipline. He was part of that, that has let us down in the first half of the year, not just in terms of cards, but being really focused in our approach. And these are things we need to learn as a team. I'm sure Biss probably feels himself a bit frustrated with the fact he had such a great start and now it's been disrupted. But yeah, great to have him back, particularly against a team like City. He's going to be really important for us. And on the discipline, he said, it's a lesson for him and us as a group. If you want things to run a bit more smoothly, you have to be really disciplined in your approach and really focused in what you do. Hopefully he comes out of this knowing for him to maintain becoming a real important part of our team. He needs to have that discipline and focus, not just him, but the whole group, because if you look at the first 13 games, that's an area that cost us. Yeah, that was that moment when I was a bit like, I told you about that about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and you didn't, and you just missed it. And I cried. No, I didn't really. But yeah, Basuma's just lost his rhythm at the moment, and he's overcomplicating things. For the third goal, had a real opportunity. He got lucky. The ball kind of broke his way. He got into a bit of space, and you thought, okay, well, you got through that. And then for some unknown reason, he turned back into that danger and came across suddenly 3 City players. The ball was dispossessed, works up, and Grealish scores. And that was just something he didn't need to do, because you get Basuma being dominant. He's one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. Kind of that driving, aggressive, brilliant on the ball. I mean, we were making comparisons with Moussa Dembele at the start of the season because of how good he was with the ball. And if he takes a couple of players out of the game, bang, suddenly there's loads of space ahead of you for everyone else to get involved and do what they need to do from an attacking sense. But yeah, he just needs to find his groove again. And like Postecoglou said, maybe it's a case now of getting a run of games. I think he's only played something like 3 games in 8 weeks or something like that, along those lines, because of the 2 international breaks. I think it was along those lines. Might be slightly more, but yeah, hopefully he'll get back quite quickly to where he was. Just is the kind of guy that I think needs an arm around his shoulder, needs Postecoglou to tell him how special he is, and I'm pretty sure he'll get back to where he was. The other player who I felt didn't have the greatest of days was Emerson Royal. Obviously, you've got to caveat that massively with a massive dose of sympathy, because he's a right back playing in a completely alien role to him. If he's ever played, previously as a centre back, it would have been on the side of a back 3. But yeah, you've got to give him that, I guess. But I think the thing that kind of disappointed me more yesterday was his use of the ball, and that doesn't fall into that centre-back category. That is something that, as a full-back, he should be good enough on the ball. He just was so sloppy with it. He did 12 minutes in, he made an absolute mess of it, and that was the one that Haaland had that pretty much open goal and managed to somehow hit it first time wide. Then he had another moment when he gave the ball away in the first half, and that was the one where Alvarez hit the left-hand post. And he just had a few of those moments. But don't get me wrong, did some good things defensively and really mucked in. Showed an amazing amount of effort, as he always does. He had 9 clearances, 2 tackles as well. And when Spurs' backs were to the wall, he really kind of helped them out defensively. But he did also cause quite a few problems himself. And actually, I think for the 3rd goal, he kind of didn't quite make a proper clearance. He sliced the ball up in the air and it got worked back into the... Sorry, 2nd goal that was. He sliced the ball up in the air, got headed on, and the ball was worked back into the box for Foden to score. So, look, he's likely to lose his place now to Romero. But, yeah, it's just disappointed with his use of the ball, really. Ben Davies, I thought Ben Davies was good, had a good game. Obviously played that big moment for Spurs' 2nd goal with that diving header as well. He made 5 clearances, 1 tackle, 1 interception. I've seen some people blaming him for City's 2nd goal, which is incredibly harsh. I watched it back because I didn't think that in the moment, and so I watched it back about a million times this morning, just pausing, rewinding, stopping, watching, pausing, rewinding, going back again. And what I saw when I watch it is that Davies realises that Alvarez is breaking the offside. It's not going to work. The offside line is just too far back, and Alvarez is breaking from it. So Davies is the only one that twigs that, runs back, tries to stop Alvarez, but because everyone else is switched off, Foden then goes in completely unmarked into space and puts it away. So no, I didn't put Davies as the one that was the one that caused that issue as well. I thought he played pretty well. Again, another player playing in a role that isn't his most natural role. And I do think alongside Romero, someone that's going to take charge of the back line again, be dominant, be aggressive, and then Davies then just only has to worry about his own game. I think there will be quite a nice balance there until Van de Ven comes back, or maybe a new defender comes in before that in early January. That would be great for Spurs. But yeah, I do think we'll see a better side to Davies. Not that he's been awful by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he'll feel more comfortable. And like I say, exactly that, just being able to focus on what he needs to do rather than worrying about where everyone else is as the kind of the older head in the back line. As for the fullbacks, Porro and Udogie, Porro was, quite nice in some moments, quite good in some moments. Played a lovely ball to Johnson in the first half that kind of set him away. Udogie picks up a yellow card for a bit of an iffy challenge, and it was a bit like, oh no, not again. But he showed real maturity, I felt, second half. He made 6 clearances, 3 tackles and 1 interception, which was very impressive. So fullbacks did okay, did fine. Tough job, obviously, up against the wingers they had. I mean, Porro had Doku, who's, it's just a live wire, isn't he? Which makes me think of Count Dooku from Star Wars, the prequels. The other disappointment for me was probably Bryan Gil, unfortunately. I felt he progressively kind of got worse as the first half went on. I think he started it really brightly. Obviously, had that lovely moment and movement for the first goal, putting Kulusevski away. And then he had a couple of little kind of nice moments where he dragged Kyle Walker infield in the Spurs half and twisted and turned away from him. And I've kind of felt at that point, he's going to give Walker something else to think about. We know that if you try and match Walker for pace, other than Johnson right at the end, you're going to struggle. So I thought, okay, he's going to use a little bit of skill, a little bit of nous and bring him inside and twist and turn him and create some space for others. But it didn't really go that way. He kind of ended up playing the game that Walker was happy with, and he was out-muscling him, and he was out-pacing him. He did have another big chance with a nice little bit of anticipation. He stopped, I think it was a Silva pass. And it was one of those where, yes, it's easy to say, I guess, from up in the press box, but you kind of felt like if he'd hit it first time, Edison was way out of his goal. It could have been a goal, but he didn't. He kind of hesitated, and eventually the chance was lost. Just keep going back to it with him. The same thing. So much quality and quite a clever footballing brain as well. Tactically, everyone raves about it. He's able to take on tactics really well. Physically, he's one of the fittest, but the physical stature, I just don't know whether he's going to be able to make a consistent impact in the Premier League because of that. I'd love to be wrong because I love him as a player, but I just don't know whether he can impose himself in the Premier League on a consistent basis, or whether he's just going to be a guy that in little moments is going to be able to do nice things that help out. So that's pretty much, I think I've run through the whole team there. Like I said, nice little cameo from Skippy as well. Don't worry, we're going to talk about Jamie Dolly as well in a little bit. I'm trying to think of any other subs. Højbjerg came on. Yeah, that was it really, wasn't it? Now it's just a case of getting people back. Getting them back through out of the physio room or out of the suspension room. I don't think they have one of those. That would be weird. Just a room where they make them write lines. I shall not get sent off. I shall not do stupid tackles. I shall be more intelligent on the pitch. You're going to get Romero back. Did you notice I might have been talking about him then? You're going to get Romero back now, which is a big thing. 3 games where they've really missed him. And now he comes back and hopefully starts making amends. And I do feel that bit I read about that Postecoglou was talking about Basuma and discipline. I think Postecoglou was as much talking about Romero there. Really was as well. So actually talking about bookings and discipline, Destiny Udogi's now on 4 yellow cards. So he's 1 away from another match ban. Although I guess if Romero's back, you've kind of got Emerson at least as a body to play there, although we know he doesn't play the role as well as Udogie does. He's on 4 yellow cards. Højbjerg and Sarr are both on 3. So they can only get another 1. They don't want to get 2 more before the 19th game, I think it is. So they've got 5 more games to get through. There's that. Who else we got coming back? Postecoglou said Sarr should be back by the end of the week. Whether that means he's back in time for Thursday, or whether that means for West Ham, or whether he's back for Sunday against Newcastle, we shall see. Richarlison got some minutes. That was good. He was the other sub, wasn't he? Of course he was. Came on towards the end of the game. He was only, Postecoglou said beforehand, he was only going to get maybe 5-10 minutes. I think he got about 15, maybe a little bit more actually with added time. Was it about? Maybe it was about 15. Actually, no, I think I'm talking rubbish. I think he got about 12 minutes. I'm sure I looked at that a little bit earlier. He didn't touch the ball much, other than booting the ball into the crowd after Kulusevski. I don't know whether he got a yellow card for that. He may well have done. But the thing for him now is that he is clear of injury. You know, he said that this problem in his pubic bone has been causing him issues for a long time now. So, unrestricted by this, are we going to now see the £60 million version of Richarlison? I really hope so. Because obviously Son's heading off to the Asian Cup towards the end of January. So Richarlison, unless they bring someone else in, is going to have to play that role through the centre. So, it'd be good to see him kind of really making an impact now. Needs to build up his fitness first. So the rest of the squad, though, we're not really going to see back till the new year. Like I said, Maddison and Van de Ven further into January. Manor Solomon apparently is making good progress from his recovery after obviously he had surgery on a meniscus injury, didn't he? So we'll see him in the new year as well. Bentancur, we know, is February. Some good news, a little bit sooner than that. Ryan Sessegnon should be back in group training within the next couple of weeks, which is a big thing for him. Obviously, he's been out since... God, when was that? I saw him it was July, wasn't it? We saw him in the early pre-season photos. And then he had this surgery, which hopefully... The idea is that it fixes his hamstring issues for good, or at least lessens them enormously coming back. From what I understand, the club is still going to be ultra cautious with him. So when I say he's back in a couple of weeks in group training, it doesn't mean you're going to see him in a matchday squad at that time. They're going to really, really want to make sure that there's no chance of a setback with this. He's still just 23 years old. Really does. He's still got the whole of his career ahead of him if he can get this sorted now. I still feel we'll probably see him head out on loan if he's in a good position to do so next month. But there is a part of me that kind of thinks, he probably going to fit that role quite well as a left-back in the Postecoglou system. If you could get him, again, that's the massive if, but hopefully the surgery sorts that. But Sessegnon as a Postecoglou left-back, it might not be too shabby at all. He's very attacking. He can come inside as well and play that number 10 role, I think. It will be just about his confidence, I guess, in playing passes under pressure. But I still think a loan is probably the best move for him to start to get game time back in his legs, which he's not going to get as long as Udogie's fit. But, fingers crossed for him. Whenever there's anything about Sessegnon on the social media, it's always a little bit unpleasant for me. I get the frustration that he's missed a lot of football in his kind of early years of his career. But I think people forget that he's a young player that has so much talent. I mean, this guy burst on the scene at 16, 17. He was one of the best young players in English game. Or most exciting ones, I mean. And he's just had these hamstring issues from hell. And hopefully this is the end of it. I would love it if he does that. I mean, in a different way, people would moan about Jack Clark and not being good enough, and Jack Clark is now absolutely smashing it in the Championship, and I'm no doubt he'll be a Premier League player very soon as well. So I just think sometimes we write people off a little bit early, and I hope that's what's happened with Sessegnon. Obviously that's not quite enough players coming back. especially with Basuma Sarr and Son also heading off in January. So they are going to need to dip into the transfer market in January. I asked him, funny enough, about that midfield area with Basuma and Sarr heading off and whether he would need to bring in another central midfielder, Postecoglou, and he said, it depends. We're not sort of ruling anything out. What you sort of outlined there is the best case scenario, that if everyone else who is here stays fit, which hasn't been the case so far, we may be forced to. There may be no choice on it. Again, not going into January, but we've got some sort of specific ideas about what we're going to try and do for sure. But at the same time, depending on how things go between now and then and how the recovery of guys is, we may need to make a different kind of decision. But all of that work has been done, so we're ready either way. So that's cool. It kind of shows you that they've got plans A, B and C ready for the window in terms of what positions, if they do need someone in a role, who they're going to go for and stuff like that. Hopefully, that means early movement, early plans and getting things done sharpish in a January window. It's quite interesting. Just simply looking at defensive targets that they had been looking at the summer. The injury curse has absolutely affected them as well. I think I told you in the last video, obviously Trevor Chalobah has been out, hasn't even played a single game this season or minute this season because of a hamstring injury which he had a setback from. Lloyd Kelly, who was at Bournemouth and Spurs made a late bid that was rejected, or late approach that was rejected for him. He's just had a muscle injury that he's going to be out for a number of weeks with. Tosin Adarabioyo had groin surgery. He's just come back. He played like a minute or so last week and he was an unused sub on the bench. It'll be interesting to see whether Fulham don't use him because of his contract situation. He's up in 6 months. I understand that Spurs have continued to show an interest in him. I'm not sure how available he's going to be in the January window, whether that's because of Fulham maybe wanting a little bit more money, or whether the player himself perhaps waiting for that summer window to get a move that financially benefits him that little bit more. And don't forget, there was definitely a moment when he preferred, I think it was a move to Monaco, wasn't it? I think because of the regular football. And that is the thing about Spurs, isn't it? Unless there are injuries, he's not going to be a regular starter at Spurs unless he absolutely smashes it. So yeah, keep an eye on him. Like I say, it's definitely, I know there is still interest there, but whether it's a deal that can be seen to be done for a cut price fee because of his contract or not, we shall see. But obviously a homegrown player as well. Talking of injuries, Eric Dyer. Yeah, Eric Dyer missed the game yesterday because Postecoglou said he felt sore after training. Not great for him. Obviously, he's in that situation now where he knows he's not really going to play. Doesn't fit the Postecoglou system. Postecoglou doesn't really seem to have much faith in him in terms of being able to play the way he wants to play. And his contract's up in 6 months' time. It's one of those really difficult ones. I can understand fully why Eric Dyer, after what will be a decade at the club in the summer, will feel that he deserves to walk away at the end of his deal and get the best possible financial deal for himself. There's also another part of me that thinks if he has any last desire to sneak back into the England team for the Euros, he really needs a move in January. But Spurs, I can't see are going to loan him unless they just want that little bit of salary money back. Which maybe they look at the situation and think we are just going to lose him. But it's interesting because if he's not going to play Dyer, he needs two centre-backs in the January window. He really does. We'll see how they kind of deal with that and how they react. So yeah, Spurs just need to get a little bit of momentum back now. You'd hope that this draw will do that. And also Romero coming back and getting Sarr back as well. Richarlison back as an option up front as well. I think all of that just gives that little bit more competition in a few places, and that drives players on too, and also allows them to have rest over what is a busy festive period. Another Postecoglou quote for you. We're going through a tough period, absolutely, in terms of personnel. Players playing in positions they're not familiar with, and at the same time me not wanting them to compromise on the team we want to be, so it's not easy. I always feel that if you can get through these tough periods in the manner which I think you need to, and that is trying to stay true to what you started, trying to work on the team you want to become, you come out of it stronger, irrespective of the knocks you get along the way. I guess a day like today, if nothing else, gives the players a bit of belief in themselves as people more than players. That you know what? They do have that character and belief that even in the toughest of circumstances, not to lay down. I think these kind of games are always a measure, but I think more important than that is how you deal with the inevitable challenges and tough times, because every team will go through them. Now we've gone through a fairly extreme one, and we're still going to go through it. We're going to get Romero back this week, which will be great for us. We've obviously missed him in the back four. Richie got some game time, and hopefully Pap Sarr, he calls him Pappy Sarr, which sounds a bit like Papa Smurf, by the end of the week will be available, but the rest of them won't be back until the new year. We're going through a tough time, and I think how you deal with tough times is just important. I really do. That's why I've been really strong on us, not wavering from playing the football that we want to play. We have fallen short at times, which, considering the personnel out, is understandable. But if we can get through this period and still be in a decent position table-wise and get the players back and get some momentum, and I do think that will happen, I'm confident will happen, unless it's going to be one of those extraordinary years where we're constantly with this attrition rate in our squad. But I think we can battle with the best. There's this kind of belief within the club. I just feel it's growing a little bit that, do you know what, maybe something still very decent can happen this season, and that comes off the back of 3 straight defeats before yesterday. I just feel like they think this guy's showing us something fantastic. This guy is creating and bringing something to our club that is absolutely brilliant. The players are buying it. Listen to Kulusevski talk about Postecoglou. Honestly, he just reveres him. And I think Madison's done a podcast with Ben Foster this week that I've only kind of seen little snippets. I've sent an email. I haven't listened to it yet. And he talks about it in such glowing terms. And Vicario looks up to him. All the players seem to look up to him. I don't know whether Eric Dyer does. And I would like to think Eric Dyer's quite kind of professional, can see the way that Spurs are going and just realises he's just not, unfortunately, part of it. That doesn't diminish from what Postecoglou's doing. It's just so exciting. And seeing what they do, even the way they play, even with barely any players available. Kulusevski keeps talking about being at the top. So, like he says, if they can just get to maybe the end of January and still be up and amongst it, who knows? Who knows what could happen with a few additions and those players back. And there was that lovely little emotional moment right at the end of added time when Jamie Donnelly finally made his Tottenham Hotspur debut. I say finally, he's only 18 years old, but finally in the sense that he's been on the bench in recent weeks and we've all kind of been waiting for it and hoping for it. It was lovely. And knowing and seeing and talking to a lot of people at the academy levels over the years, I know how much a moment like that means to so many people. It's such a huge thing. We just see it, and the fans just see it as, that young player's coming on. Oh, that's cool. But there is so many people throughout all the age groups. I mean, Jamie Donnelly's been at Spurs since he was 8. So every coach he's had that's played a part in him getting to be a Premier League player will have probably felt quite emotional seeing that. I mean, you've got like Stuart Lewis, who's the under-18s coach. He's worked with him, I think, at younger levels as well. And you've got Wayne Burnett now for the under-21s. They've done so much. But it's not even just about the coaches. It's about the players who work with him. I think Wayne Burnett said this in a recent interview. It's about those who work with him in the sports science staff. It's about those who, even like the cooks, the dietitians, the people just within the club, the kit man, everyone that just deals with them every day, trying to make their day as focused and as easy as possible in terms of they just have to worry about the hard work they put in, not about any other worries that they might have. And also looking to develop them, progress them, help them learn as well as young men. And they can all take that moment to be really proud of what happened. When he finally kind of got to, you want to call it the pinnacle, because every academy player, they all dream of playing in the Premier League. That's what they dream of. But it's almost weird. It's like they've reached this door, they've opened it. And as soon as they open that door, they realise, oh, pants, there's a whole load of massive path ahead of that. Because it is, you get that. I mean, he played about 2 minutes, I think, when he came on. And he made 2 touches. He won an aerial duel as well, an important kind of one in the Spurs half. But still, that's just the start now. and he knows it. Jamie Donnelly is a very grounded, intelligent young guy. He knows that that's the first step. Brilliant. Enjoy the moment. But he wants to be a consistent Premier League player. He wants to be someone that people speak about in years to come. And he is a Spurs fan through and through. His family are Spurs fans. It's terrific. And he deserves it. You know, if you haven't heard me say the stats before, 6 goals, 11 assists he's got for the under-21s in just the 12 Premier League 2 and EFL trophy matches alone. He scored more goals in the Premier League Cup as well. Scored goals for the England under-19s as well in the recent little trip. He had a little tournament they had. And I think the fact that Postecoglou trusted him to come on in those last couple of moments, I know he was eating up time, but to trust him to come on and not give the ball away in a silly situation or something like that, that's a big pat on the back as well. And I hope Jamie Donnelly kind of takes that from that moment. He did a little interview with the club after. It was a classic kind of very young player interview. He spoke well. Don't get me wrong, but you could see how nervous he was and that. And I really hope it's one of those that hopefully becomes a big star. We look back on that and the way he did the interview and how nervous he was. But even despite being a little bit nervous, you could see how switched on enough he was to recognise those who have played their part. I've got his quotes here. It was only like a minute and 13 seconds interview. He said, I'm obviously very happy to make my debut, but the result is the most important thing, and I thought we played very well second half. It was a good draw here. I've been through the whole academy, so I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been along my journey. It's been a ride, but this is obviously the ultimate goal. Hopefully I can carry on from here. This is what we aim for when we're playing well in the under-18s and moving to the under-21s. This is the next step, so hopefully I can carry on getting more minutes. Obviously, I'm a massive Spurs fan myself, so is my family, so it's a very good moment. And I think whenever a player makes their Premier League debut, I think they get like a little trophy from the Premier League, like in the shape of a match ball. I'm pretty certain they do. But also at Spurs, they have this nice little habit of the player will go and then take like a little group photo with various coaches that have helped them on their way. It's always a very nice kind of moment. As I said, it's huge for the academy. It is their goal. I know I said for the player there's another door and there's a long pathway for everything else they want to achieve. But for the academy, their goal is to take that player to a level where they become a Premier League player for Tottenham. Ultimately, there's other goals about getting them to be a professional player, getting them into the Football League, wherever they may go, or just sending them out a better person, a better player at the end of the academy. But ultimately, the top goal is to be a player for Tottenham, of course, in the first team. So yeah, great. There's a lot of hope surrounding Donnelly. There really is, and how far he can progress. And you know, the injuries, he's still going to get opportunities, I think, in the weeks ahead. I hope he still gets on that bench. Iago Santiago was on the bench yesterday because of Dyer's injury, so that was a big moment for him. I think he was on there previously. Was it against Leeds? Was it last season? Maybe at the end of the season when Matthew Craig and George Abbott came on. I got a feeling maybe Santiago was on the bench as well. I know he's definitely been on there before. But yeah, I mean, you had Santiago, Dorrington and Donnelly all on the bench. Brandon Austin technically as well, and Skippy. So you had 5 academy products on that bench, and I might even be forgetting someone else. But yeah, great to see Donnelly come on. If you're not aware who he is, he's mainly always been a forward, but in recent years has started to really develop also as an attacking midfielder. And I said it before, but I know Lo Celso's doing a great job, so at the moment, of course, that's his role. But I actually do feel that he could develop very nicely into a bit of a Maddison role as well. We'll see. Alfie Devine, another one who we'll talk about in a little bit, who I feel can do that role as well. But yeah, that was a big moment. And I think it was a big night, to be honest. I think it will be remembered for now as like a great comeback and a crazy game and a point for Spurs that it would be big for their confidence. But I hope that 2 things happen now. We look back on that match as the moment when maybe the Postecoglou team was, I guess, born in a way, because out of adversity, out of a really difficult situation with such kind of makeshift personnel, they managed to still play their way in that second half and showed that they could come away from the champions with a point. without being beaten, and then that could be the shot in the arm and the final little, okay, this works. And the other thing I hope is that maybe it'll be we'll all remember. Do you remember when Jamie Donnelly made his debut and went on to become a superstar, a Spurs legend? Wouldn't that be wonderful if we look back to that game at the Etihad? It'd be great because I could replay this video if I'm still around, if I'm still alive, if Spurs haven't killed me off by then. I could look back and say that I said that, so that'd be terrific. I really hope he does, because he's got everything about him. He's got the work rate, he's got the ability as well. There's also an element of luck with young players in terms of their injuries and making sure that they don't kind of have just nightmare injuries. I'll always talk about Terry Dixon, who was such an incredible young player in the Spurs academy. Young Republic of Ireland international, was seen as like the Irish Wayne Rooney. Although technically I don't think he was Irish. I think it was Irish background in his family. He was phenomenal, but he ended up just getting a horrendous knee injury, came back, and shortly after got another horrendous knee injury. I did a really nice interview with him. All him, not the way I wrote it. All what he told me a few years back. If you want to Google Terry Dixon, I think you have to Google Terry Dixon interview. Wait, just Google Terry Dixon, Alistair Gold, probably it's going to come up with it. I wonder if that's the first time I've ever said my own name in a video. I don't know. But yeah, honestly, it's worth it to kind of understand his journey and what happened to him. But yeah, the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes it's out of your control. And there's a lot of players that have the quality that don't make it. Like I've said previously, before I covered Spurs, I would cover lower down the Football League, I would cover non-league. And I would see and talk to and interview players that had dropped out of Premier League academies or been released, who thought they were the bee's knees, who thought that they were temporarily just stopping off in non-league and would end up becoming Premier League stars again. I try and remember if any of them did. A couple of them got back into the Football League, but most of them never did. It was just because there was something that they didn't quite have that the top players have. And that's why I think when we kind of sometimes mock or take the mickey out of players that we think, oh, they're rubbish, how are they a Premier League footballer? They've still got so much more than 99.9% of everyone else trying to be a Premier League footballer. It is such a knife edge trying to become a footballer. It really is. You can have everything going for you, but still need that extra little thing going for you. But there you go. So yeah, hopefully Jamie Donnelly becomes a star. That would be wonderful. Another kind of one of our own, as it were. A little quick loan roundup before I head off. Joe Rodham, another good performance to a degree for Leeds. Leeds didn't look too great defensively, but he was probably one of the more solid players for them as they beat Middlesbrough 3-2 at the weekend. 10 men Middlesbrough for the last, I think, half hour or so. He played well in the midweek as well against Swansea. Jed Spence is back. He's on the bench for Leeds at the moment. Last couple of games he's been back, so that's good news. Obviously, if you weren't aware, he had a knee injury that kept him out for 8 weeks. The problem for him now is that everyone expected him to slot straight back into Daniel Farke's team at Leeds as the right back. Obviously, terrific season, didn't he, for Nottingham Forest on loan, helped them get promotion, so everyone expected, okay, he'll do that again for Leeds. But he's come up against a little problem at the moment in that young 17-year-old Archie Gray, who is a midfielder, has been playing as a right back in the last couple of games and has been excellent. He's really adapted really well. So whether that means Jed Spence had to bide his time a little bit, I think that might be the case right now. So, but at least he's on his way back. That's a start. Tanguy Ndombele at Galatasaray got 7 minutes, I think it was. Let me just double check about my notes. Yeah, 7 minutes at the end of Galatasaray's 2-0 win at Pendikspor. Obviously, he'd had a couple of starts in a row, had played 90 minutes, his first 90 minutes of the season as they won last week, and then he played about an hour against Man U in the Champions League. So back on the bench, unfortunately, but hopefully he's turned a bit of a corner there. We'll see. This is the key now, is that he doesn't let his head drop and that affect other areas of his kind of progression he'd made, because apparently in the international break he worked incredibly hard and really kind of pushed his claims. So now it's about how excuse me, I'm not crying. Oh, Tommy. Now it's about how he reacts to that little setback and things not going exactly how he wants them to go. Sergio Reguilon is back on the fringes a bit at Man U now with... my nose is just bugged up again. Excuse me. As back on the fringes again because Luke Shaw's back. He got 10 minutes at the end as they lost to Newcastle. They've got a couple of games in quick succession like all Premier League teams have this week, so he might feel that maybe he'll get a bit more game time in one of those games. I think they've got Chelsea and... I've written it down somewhere here. Chelsea and Bournemouth, both at home. Japhet Tanganga. Now, there's talk in Germany that Japhet might be recalled by Spurs. I don't know whether that's actually the case. I don't even know whether the deal would allow it or not, because it was one with an option to buy. And various objectives that would make it a permanent one. So I don't entirely know whether that option's there. But certainly the German media outlet Kicker have suggested that Augsburg are trying to reduce their squad from 32 players, and that may be one of the ways they go. The problem was twofold. One problem for Japhet is that he's arrived with a knee injury and it's taken him longer than everyone expected to get back from it. He's been back now, fit. He played first 45 minutes in a friendly junior international break for Augsburg. But the other problem for him is that the new coach, Jess Thurup, has changed. I think they had a back five and they now play with a back four. And that means that they've got 6 centre-backs all trying to get into just 2 positions. And obviously Japhet is a bit of a late comer to the party, and he's missed so much. And now he's come in and isn't going to be match fit. And he's not even getting in the matchday squad. I think he got into 1 matchday squad. So we'll see what happens with him and whether there is any suggestion that he can come back and then probably get sent on loan again. Kicker seems to suggest that perhaps Spurs might take the decision out of Augsburg's hands by bringing him back, but I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, it depends really. I clearly just don't feel he's a player that's got a future at Spurs. Hence why they, put the option and the objectives that make it a permanent move as well, which were meant to be really easy to achieve. But of course, because he's missed so many games, he's probably not going to be able to make those objectives. Troy Parrott played 77 minutes as Excelsior Rotterdam drew 2-2 with RKC Walwick, which was one of Martin Joel's old clubs. I remember writing about them back in the day. One of their old clubs as a manager. That was the first time Troy hasn't really had a bit of a direct goal involvement recently. He's 4 goals and 2 assists in his previous 8 games before that. Dane Scarlett, 21 minutes from the bench against Millwall in midweek, and he was unused sub against Coventry at the weekend. In that Millwall game, I think he was unable to put away quite a big chance late on. The keeper saved, so that was a shame. He got a 6 from their player ratings. The local paper, the East Anglian Daily Times. Alfie Devine, real shame for him. He played 79 minutes of the 1-0 defeat to Port Vale's defeat to Derby, but then has picked up a little bit of an injury that is not meant to keep him out long, but he did miss the FA Cup game at Stevenage, so drew 1-1, and I think they've got a game this week that he's going to miss as well. So hopefully not too long-term a thing for him, because he's played really well for them. I was looking up 3 goals, 3 assists from midfield, 19 matches, 1,169 minutes to his name as well. So, yeah, Alfie's had a terrific loan. Almost to the point where you do wonder whether, in January, if he's fit, whether you do you bring him back and put him to another higher level to test him, or do you keep him going at a club where he's going to play a lot of football? It's a difficult decision, that. I think with Dane, probably they're going to have to bring him back to get him some football, because he's just not getting enough at Ipswich. And there you go. And then they've obviously both gone off, and then you've got someone... That's the irony, isn't it? That's the way it works, that Dane Scarlett and Alfie Devine right now would be getting minutes. They would. Here and there, they'd be getting little minutes, little bits of patches of minutes. And Jamie Donnelly obviously has benefited. Valise benefited as well. It's funny the way it works. But yeah, in an ideal world, it's probably still better for someone like Alfie Devine to get regular minutes, and Dane, that was the aim, but it hasn't actually happened yet. So there you go. Next video will obviously be... I'm going to try and squeeze it in somewhere. It might end up being Friday, late on Friday, I guess, because we've got a manic week. Ange has decided he's going to do press conferences galore. So we've got a press conference on Wednesday, match on Thursday where there'll be a press conference afterwards. Friday he's going to do a pre-match press conference for the Newcastle game, and then obviously he'll have a press conference on Sunday at the Newcastle game. So he'll be doing 4 press conferences in 5 days. He is going to be sick of this face. He is going to be so like, oh, you again. But it's his decision, because technically what they are allowed to do sometimes is that he could have done a little pre-match section for Newcastle after the West Ham game. It's not as great in terms of content, because you only ask about 3 or 4 questions and that's it, and it's held over until the next day and then it's put out there. So this way you guys and girls get more content. But my goodness, we're going to have to think about a lot of questions to ask him to cover 4 different press conferences within 5 days. I think, from what I understand, he likes to focus on one game at a time. And I think that's the thinking behind doing a press conference the next day rather than straight after the game. I'm trying to think if they've done any yet that have looked ahead to the next game straight after. I don't think he has. Whereas Conte was quite happy to do that. Conte was like, yep, gives me a day off a press conference. I can fly back to Italy and see my family. I don't think he did that all the time, but he did do it a fair bit. So yeah, West Ham game is going to be an interesting one. They're going to target Spurs with set pieces, of course, but obviously Romero being back's a big thing. I was thinking yesterday, after the game, I said this to Gessie, how much, one of the things, of course you miss Harry Kane for all of his goals, and Spurs with him up front in this system would be absolutely ridiculous, with Sonny firing alongside him as well. But what you also miss Harry Kane a lot, I think, is as that first header for defensive free kicks and corners. He was just so important in getting the head to the ball in so many of those moments, and they don't really have someone that does that as much now. So, yeah, it's another little thing you lose in losing one of the best players in the world, I guess. But yeah, West Ham are going to target that area, you would think, and Spurs are going to be ready for that. It's going to be a kind of a ferocious derby atmosphere, just what you want to chuck Romero back into. And they do have this habit of doing quite well at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as well, West Ham, which is quite annoying. But I hope Spurs take elements of what they did at Man City and the confidence, but also take elements of what they did against Aston Villa and the way they played, the football and the chances they created, put them together, and what have you got? Hopefully beating West Ham. I was going to say bibbidi bobbidi boo, but it doesn't really work. Yeah, because that's a big match. They can get back on track, get a win that puts them in a real kind of position. They haven't been cut adrift from that top 4. They can really kind of push straight back towards it again. And then the Newcastle game, obviously we'll talk about that on Friday, but it's quite interesting that Newcastle, anyone else I would maybe think, Spurs will be so knackered with such a small squad playing 2 games in about 3 days. But actually, Newcastle have got something like 14 was the number I saw, injuries in their first team squad. So they're going through something similar. Maybe have not lost, I don't know, I could be doing them a massive disservice. But with Spurs, obviously, they've lost real key players through the core of their squad. Their starting 11. Maybe Newcastle have done that as well. But they've got to go away to Everton, which is a tough game. You know, Everton are kind of picking up some form. Maybe not at home so much, but they are a difficult battling team to play. They've got to go to Everton and then come to Spurs. So they're going to be a bit knackered as well. So it's going to be the survival of the fittest in a way. So we'll see how that goes. Right, I'm going to head off now. Rest my throat and my ever quickly bunging up nose. And the little white dot didn't really come back in. I saw it briefly. I don't know what this camera does. I swear it moves ever so slightly occasionally. It kind of comes into view and then it goes. Sorry for that very unprofessional moment where I was trying to move it out of shot. But hey, that's what you get with these. You know that. They're not professional. They're not edited. They're not polished. It is me sitting down doing this in one take and just going all the stuff about Spurs that comes out of my brain and mouth. And I'm always so thankful for you watching. I really am. Thank you very much. Like I always say, I'm not one of those guys that asks people to watch, asks them to like, subscribe, any of that sort of stuff. I just hope you like it if you've happened to have clicked and started to watch. I know it's a very different thing from what's out there. It's a different format. It's not short, sharp and snappy. It's not made for the TikTok generation and all this sort of stuff with their little kind of clips. It is very much I've always said it's kind of more of a podcast and video format that you can kind of play in the background while you do other stuff. And I'm always very thankful that people tune in and watch. It's very much appreciated. It really is. So yeah, right, going to head off now. And hopefully this crazy game and unexpected result is the start of something special going forward. That'd be terrific. So yeah. As always, stay healthy, stay safe. You look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.